welcome to the Q&A Cafe here at the Georgetown Club. Deep breaths. We've had a morning, haven't we? I think the whole city's had a morning. And while I have Bob Woodward here today, thank you, Bob, his 5th appearance at the Q&A, to talk about this, Watergate's 50th anniversary, and this, your most recent book I have from my Bob Woodward library. I feel compelled to start with the news that broke last night, because you've also written about the Supreme Court. And while it's not, well, actually, basically, the Chief Justice has acknowledged that it's a real draft and it's real. I think what I wanted to talk to you about, because we won't know whether Roe v. Wade gets what the decision is until June or July. And it could go any which way. But what we do know right now is it's an unprecedented leak. There have been leaks before, but nothing quite on this scale. And I was wondering if you would talk to us about what this means in the culture of the Supreme Court for something like this, and when the Chief Justice says he's going to have it investigated thoroughly and fiercely.
Yeah, boy, I mean, talking about that, I'm more interested in the substance of what this opinion says that apparently is legitimate. And if you think about it, it's no surprise at all.
True.
No, it's not that
the leak
these
is
five
the surprise.
Pardon?
The leak is the surprise.
Yeah,
not
exactly.
The point of view.
But the leak is not, will be a footnote to history. But if this becomes the decision, this becomes history.
Yeah.
And this caused me to go back and read some of The Brethren, which is the book Scott Armstrong and I did on the Supreme Court in 1979. So this is really a very different era for the culture of the court, for the country. And what was interesting to go back and read about that, because we had a very detailed inside account of what happened. And needs to be emphasized that Roe v. Wade was a very unusual decision written by Harry Blackmun, who was one of the Minnesota twins with the Chief Burger. And Burger assigned Blackmun to write the case, though some of the liberal justices like Douglas were furious because they thought that Burger was not in the majority, and under their internal traditions, the senior justice in the majority. So Douglas thought he should assign the opinion. But Blackmun went to work, and Blackmun was, he wrote the opinion in the Mayo Clinic Medical Library over the summer. And it has been criticized and praised as a doctor's decision. And at the time he was writing this, almost 50 years ago, doctors generally held that the abortion or the viability of a fetus would be broken into three-month periods. And Blackmun adopted this and essentially was saying, well, viability is 24 to 28 months. And it's a doctor's opinion. And his clerk on the case, George Frampton, who I knew was a classmate of mine in college. And George kind of shoveled some constitutional language in it and kind of dressed it up. But even liberal clerks on the court at the time called it Harry's abortion, the opinion, because it made no constitutional sense. So the critique in this leaked opinion is not new. It's got a basis, even if you think abortion is right or necessary, and so in so many ways, I'm just not surprised. And the opinion, Roe v. Wade, 7-2, 7 in favor, including Warren Burger, who wrote short opinion for himself, saying this doesn't mean there's abortion on demand. That was one of the many things Warren Burger was wrong about, because of course it became an opinion, abortion on demand.
Let me just ask you this though about the leak, because if you certainly in this room and in this city and probably in this country, you are an expert on leaks.
No.
Oh, now just let me finish.
No, I won't let you finish, because you mislabeled aggressive, thorough reporting.
Okay, well, I think they go together.
As if a leak that you kind of leave a basket outside your door,
well, I don't see
and hope somebody comes in and.
Well, Deep Throat left a newspaper outside your door.
Yes, that's true.
But okay, well, let me just say then.
Yeah.
Okay, so leaks don't just fall out of the sky. Some do, some don't. Some are based on hard reporting that you're already doing. But when you look at something like this, who do you immediately think is responsible for it?
No, I immediately think, why not me?
Well, I tried that.
Where was I?
I wondered about that.
Yeah, I did. And, they...
Did you call up all the justices today to ask them if
No. I think it's going to work its way through the system, which we in the Brethren described in great detail, not on just Roe or the Nixon tapes case, but all the cases. And the Muhammad Ali case, which was, I think, in 1970, started out literally 8-1 against Ali. And through the court process, it flipped to 0-9. In other words, everyone switched because they didn't want to send Ali to jail, because he was a symbol of many things. And so this could be a tactic, it could be
because there's always a motive, right?
Pardon?
There's always a motive.
Yeah, but motives are strange things. And you can't, as a reporter, I quickly tell this story. Doing the George W. Bush books on the wars in Afghanistan and Iraq, there was a key general who wouldn't talk and sent messages, had intermediaries, had radio silence. So I realized I was getting lazy and not going to knock on doors at night. So you're as long-serving reporter as there is in Washington. So you have this general. I found out where he lived. When would you go knock on his door?
Well, in this era, certainly not after dark. I mean, everything's changed from when you and Carl went around knocking.
Yeah, but even this is 15 years ago or 10 years.
Everybody has a ring or something.
No. The best time to go
is in the morning when they're in the snow.
No. That's when they're out exercising, the general.
So when they're asleep.
To make it look like they're, they're a colonel.
Yeah.
And it turns out the best time to go is 8:17 p.m. on a Tuesday night.
I love that.
Because he will be home if he's home.
Yeah.
And so I go knock on his door at 8:17, 8:15 on a Tuesday night, and opened the door. And he looked at me and he said, "Are you still doing this?"
And of course you were.
And so I learned from CIA case officers, and when you're talking to people, it's important to let the silence suck out the truth. Mm-hmm. So I poker faced it. Didn't say anything, no expression. And he looked at me, disappointed look on his face. And then, I think not in me, but in himself, because he said, come on in. And sat for a couple of hours, and I was able to develop a very good relationship. Now, he went from an absolute no to very quickly to a yes. Why? Because somebody showed up. We're just not showing up enough.
It's hard.
Me.
Yeah, well.
All reporters, it's kind of, let's send an email to the White House and ask a question, and then 4 assistant press secretaries will sit around the computer and compose a paragraph that contains no information, but seems like a response.
Well, without giving anything away.
Yeah.
Maybe you're already making some calls on this story to try to get ahead of Politico, but where would you go on this story now? You'd try to get to people in the court, right?
Well, sure. For the Brethren, 5 justices helped us.
Yeah.
In great detail.
All you need is 5 today.
I called Justice Powell. We're starting on this book, said Scott Armstrong and I are doing this, and I'd like to talk to you. He said, I'll be happy to talk to you. And I said, when? And he said, how about now? And I was in my bathrobe, and I said, give me a half hour and I'll be there. And so, it
worked out.
So you have to ask, and then you have to be willing to listen. I think
you also don't take no for an answer.
Well, you have to take no for an answer, but you find another way.
Well, we're saying the same thing.
Well,
that you keep tacking.
Yeah, keep working on it.
The wind.
And keep. The key element, I think, is to take people as seriously as they take themselves. People take themselves seriously, and let them talk. Don't rush out. Always leave 4 hours for an interview at least, and never leave. Always stay.
Yeah. Help to do the dishes.
If necessary.
If necessary. Sure. I mean, do you record every interview? I mean, you have to ask, right?
Oh, yes, and get permission. I do now. I think it really is great to have a transcript for writing. You would think a tape recorder would frighten people. It actually doesn't, because then they know you're going to get it right, and it gives a seriousness to the whole process.
Who was the first president you recorded interviewing?
Nixon recorded himself on everyone's behalf.
He provided a service to journalism.
I think probably Jimmy Carter later, Bush a lot, Obama a lot.
You recorded Bush in office.
Yes,
and I really mean
Obama.
In office. Yeah, that's what I really mean. And then Trump, enormous amounts.
Yeah.
And
in 2020, I did about 10 hours of interviews with Trump, and he would call.
And sometimes you were in your
my wife
bathrobe.
Elsa would pick up the phone the first time, and this voice said, "Is Bob there?" And Elsa said, "May I ask who's calling?" Donald Trump. No intermediary, nothing.
Yeah, no White House switchboard.
But so this pertains to the Supreme Court. In one of these interviews I did with him, we were talking about what really was his mission to put conservatives not just on the Supreme Court, but in all sorts of judicial positions. And at this point, he'd put some 216 federal judges on. And we're talking about this, and it's kind of banner. And I said, this is so central to what you want to do. And I said, maybe they'll put a statue of you outside the Supreme Court. And Trump jumped right on it, and he said, "Oh, what a good idea! I think I'll have it erected tomorrow. What a great idea! I think I'll use it. I think I'll do it." And then he pauses, "But I won't say the idea came from me."
He's probably thinking about that today, because really what happened last night goes back to him and who he's put on the court. I mean, this was a goal achieved.
This is mission accomplished in his view.
Yeah.
And three of the justices who are his people. And so if this comes to be, it may almost guarantee Trump is the nominee for president in 2024, because lots of presidents talk and make promises, and here is a promise delivered on. Three of those justices. And
I mean, there's some speculation whether it could backfire and drive more Democrats to the polls and ultimately not work, and only time will tell. I mean, tonight we'll see how the primaries go. I want to take a moment. I want to talk to you a little bit about you and serendipity, because I did want to talk just a bit about Watergate. I don't expect you to do another oral history. I imagine 50 years of Watergate is, for some people, like finding out their child is 50, and you kind of go, how did that happen? I haven't gotten older. But I've always been very intrigued by the early part of your story that's often not told, and how I think it played to your overall story.
How we met. Yes, we.
No, that has nothing to do.
You and I met in the fall of 1971.
Yeah.
And
I'm blushing.
we were covering
anti-war movement.
Yeah. we were.
I let you do dirty restaurants on your own.
Yeah. Street reporting.
No, we were doing street
reporting.
reporters. Yeah. And you were beating me.
And, full disclosure, you and I dated,
we
actually,
did.
for a while.
Okay, now. All right, now. Okay, no more on this. I really am blushing. So I've always been intrigued by your life before journalism. When you were in the Navy and you were at the Pentagon, you were also on a destroyer. I mean, you did your time, and you had a top secret clearance. Right? Am I correct?
Yeah.
And you would courier items documents from the Pentagon to the White House. So this world was not foreign to you when the Watergate story happened to you. You had already you knew what a top secret clearance meant. You'd been in the White House. It may have intimidated you a little, but you'd been there. And the other part of the serendipity to me
go ahead.
is that on one of these random journeys to the White House, you sit next to a man named Mark Felt.
That's right.
It's utterly random.
Totally random.
You're both there to see people.
Not to deliver documents.
You're not there.
And this is always true at any White House, but at this one in particular, because I had to give these documents to Kissinger or his deputy, and they were sealed up. I didn't have access to them, but you always waited. So this man, gray hair, white shirt,
very
pure
proper.
establishment, and we're like two seatmates on a transatlantic flight waiting. And I introduced myself, and he introduced himself and gave his number and his phone number. And
but wait, did you introduce yourself and say, "I'm Bob Woodward. I'm with the Pentagon, whatever"?
No, I
or did you say, "I'm Bob Woodward from Whittier"?
You could see I have my. I
you're
said
in uniform.
Lieutenant Woodward.
You're Lieutenant Woodward.
Right.
All right.
And so we talked, and he became kind of somebody I would call about, because I was thinking of going to law school, or a career counselor, and then when I went to work at the Post, he if anyone remembers this, Arthur Bremer shot George Wallace in Maryland.
In Maryland, yeah.
And that's when I started calling Mark Felt, who was number 2 in the FBI at that point, and asking, what about this shooting? And the FBI was determined to put the story out that Bremer had acted alone, which he had, and so Felt would give me information that Arthur Bremer had stalked Nixon in New York. So I went up to New York to the hotel where this had happened and wrote a story that Bremer was stalking Nixon, and there were stories that came. And so then when Watergate occurred, he was in charge. He was, J. Edgar Hoover had died, and
you had a strong bond.
A building bond.
Well, that mattered. He trusted you.
Well, I mean, he would help me, but trust is a big thing.
But he never cheated on you, if you'll pardon the expression. He never took what he had to another reporter. It was always only you.
No, he did.
He
some
did?
Time magazine reporters he talked to and so forth.
But not on Watergate.
Yeah, on Watergate.
On Watergate, really?
Yeah.
I didn't know that.
Cindy Smith, yes, that's true. But I pushed, and Carl Bernstein and I had this. We had a running room at the Post. The editors just said, go and, stay on this story.
Yeah.
I know. There's a quick story that connects
all about
to this,
you.
which no, this is about the Post.
Okay.
And so after Nixon resigned, and we wrote All the President's Men, and they're doing a movie about it. And Alan Pakula is the director, great director.
Great movie.
Redford and Hoffman, and so this is 75. Nixon's been out for a year, and they're casting, and they sit around and they say, who do we get to play Ben Bradley? And they knew Jason Robards from Broadway, and said, Bradley and Jason Robards are almost like separated at birth. 75 was a bad time for Robards. He was an alcoholic. He'd been in an accident, and they said, but, call him in. So they call him in and say, we'll pay you $50,000 to play Ben Bradley. And Robert, $50,000, great, give me the script. Well, I'll be back tomorrow. And so he came in the next day. And they said, so, what do you think? And Robert said, well, I can't play Bradley. Why? Well, I read the script. What's wrong with the script? Robert said, well, all Bradley does is run around and say, where's the story?
He did so much more than that.
And so Pakula said to him, that's right. That's what the executive editor of the Washington Post does. All you have to do, Bradley never liked this story, by the way. And Pakula said, all you have to do is find 15 different ways to say where's the story. And if you've seen the movie, that's what Robards did.
Yeah, no.
And he won the Academy Award for running around in 15 different ways and saying,
where's the story? I remember, I don't know if you did, we had dinner after you had you had done the deal for the movie, and you'd gone out to Sundance, I think, to meet Redford for the first time. Yeah. And the only thing I remember from the whole dinner, I was very happy for you, but that you said you were surprised that Redford was so short. That just was a blow that I wasn't ready for.
No, but, he's 85 now.
Yeah, he's amazing.
And I have periodic talks with him. In fact,
That's
just
good.
recently also about what's going on now and what he keeps saying he's going to retire and they won't let him, or he won't let himself. But he's tuned in and very strong environmentalist, as you may know.
Right.
And
very supportive to the film industry.
yeah, very, very concerned about what's going on in the country.
Mm-hmm. Another person that was in your life that I think is an intriguing series of stories and anecdotes is Ehrlichman. Ehrlichman, long after he'd gone to prison, long after Watergate was over.
He was Nixon's
one of his
counsel, and
with
then
Haldeman.
his domestic.
It was Haldeman and Ehrlichman,
yeah.
right? You ran into him in Paris, and you actually, I'm not going to say you had a relationship, but
we were not dating.
You were not dating.
We were not dating.
But you hung out a little bit. Is that correct?
Yeah, we went. He's amateur artist, and
in his life after prison.
We ran into, because we were both on some TV show, French TV show, and I liked the way he said, let's go have lunch and talk. And there was a Cezanne exhibit that he wanted to go to, and we'll go to the Cezanne exhibit again.
Amazing.
Right.
You and Ehrlichman walking around an art
right.
gallery.
Where's the Cezanne exhibit? And he found it, and what he said, look, if you want to talk to me about the past and what happened and so forth, he said, I don't need that. I've adjusted, changed, hopefully learned. But if you want to deal with me as I'm dealing with my own life right now, that's fine. And that was great. And of course, being, you have questions. And I think at that point, I was doing the Supreme Court book, The Brethren. So this is the mid-'70s or something, or late.
It's not that long after everything.
And so I said, can I ask you some questions about the Supreme Court? And he was a great source on how they picked Berger, what Nixon's relationship was with the court,
I love that.
and so forth. So there's, I don't even remember anything about Cezanne, but I do.
But you do remember. Did you have any other relationships? I mean, none that I recall, but then I'm not you. That came after Watergate like that, where you ended up talking to somebody who had been one of the Watergate characters and who you'd reported upon, and that they came back into your life in a way that allowed the two of you to find some commonality?
Yeah, a good number of them. Herbert Kalmbach, who was Nixon's personal attorney, was the one who gave out the excess campaign cash for the dirty tricks and for Watergate itself. And he was in the spotlight by the prosecutors and so forth. And one night he was here in Washington, and he came to my apartment, and was very sad, because we did kind of, what happened, how'd you get, you're the president's attorney, and of course he almost never met Nixon. All he did was the dirty work, and he burst out into tears about himself and how he took this turn, didn't ask the questions that you should ask as a lawyer. And I mean, here he's going to phone booths and calling Howard Hunt and Gordon Liddy and say, meet me in this place, and there's a satchel of cash for all of these things.
It's amazing how people will debase themselves in the service of something they think is right but don't see clearly.
Yeah, and it's George Kennan called it the treacherous curtain of deference.
Yeah.
treacherous, it's a curtain, and it's deference. And you go into the Oval Office, and so many people I've talked to for doing books on 10 presidents. And they tell these stories. They're going to go in and they're going to tell the president what they think and give their assessment and honestly. And then they get in and that treacherous curtain of deference comes down. Yes, Mr. President. Yes, whatever you say. And have you ever been in the Oval Office doing an interview or I've done lots of interviews.
I wasn't doing anything wrong.
Yeah,
but I've been in the Oval Office.
It is a remarkable room. Its simplicity, and it has the best lighting.
Yes.
There are no shadows in the Oval Office.
It is a beautiful, it's a serene room.
Yeah, it is. And it's a room of, it's the symbol of power. And it always struck me, as a journalist, you can go in there and there's no treacherous curtain of deference. There's no curtain.
Right.
You're going to ask your questions and go right,
But there's still something going on. There's still some dynamic that you can't help but feel.
Yeah, well, the dynamic I always feel is, thank God I'm not working for this person.
You used a phrase in at the time of Watergate, assault on democracy, and in one of your oral histories, you talk about how, this thing that struck you about what Nixon did and his henchmen was that they never seemed to, and it's that curtain you're talking about, but they never seemed to respect why they were there. And that you said that really every day when a president is president, he should be thinking about what can I do best for the American people, and that there was a total suspension of that, and that's the assault on democracy. And then you pretty much identify that again in your books on Trump.
The question, always trying to distill this, and I'm not a good distiller of these things, but what's the job? It's the Jason Robards question. It's the what's the job? And and the job of the president is to figure out what the next stage of good is for a majority of people in the country. You can figure it out and then have a plan and try to do that. Now it's just so, it's so polarized, and obviously in a way it's a poison. And
it's interesting. Nixon was polarizing too, but it was different. I try to explain it to people sometimes. I don't know that I do it well, because we know that he and his White House were definitely defining the media even then as the enemy of the people, and we had the silent majority, and there was a polarization, but you didn't feel it in Congress quite as much, I think, as you do now. You still had a community that lived here on the weekends. Their kids still went to school together. And they did have that after-hours time together that helped, I think so.
Yeah, that's part of it, but I also think it has to do, the people in Congress need to ask, what's the job? And not to just serve Trump, but Trump has scared people. And as my former colleague, Carl Bernstein, had said many times on CNN and anywhere, anyone will give him the chance to make this point. He said, you talk to the Republicans privately, and they disdain Trump. And it's quite true. But
I think we all have a story that reflects that.
Yeah, and so what does that mean? That just adds a layer of insincerity to relations and politics, and it's pretty.
Could you do another book on Trump? Could you? Because I remember the last time you were here on the show, you had done a book on Alex Butterfield, which is a great book. I think it's one of your best books, and you said it was your last Watergate book. Do you feel? I mean, you said that then. I'm not holding you to it.
You mean another book on Nixon?
No, another book on Trump. Could you Can you see that? I mean,
again,
I'm sure Simon & Schuster's already trying to get you and Costa.
No. The question is what's going on that, go back 2 months before the Ukraine invasion. That and this Supreme Court decision and inflation and
COVID.
I mean, they have, what's going to
top that?
Well, or what's going to define not just the president, but the country, who we are. And, when you raised Watergate, I have to think of Katharine Graham, who was the publisher and the owner of the Washington Post.
Yeah.
And she lived a block and a half away, and I would go up and see her. Elsa and I would go to her parties, and she really was a news person. And so after Watergate, after Nixon resigned, she wrote Carl and myself a letter. But she had more stationery than any 500 people. But she wrote on the yellow legal pad,
right.
Saving the Post, the expense of stationery or whatever, and it just said, "Dear Carl and Bob, now that Nixon is resigned and you did some of the stories, don't start thinking too highly of yourselves. And let me give you some advice." And the advice is beware the demon pomposity. Beware the demon pomposity. A lot of people are nodding. It infects
This
journalism.
is Washington, after all.
Wall Street is it's out there in politics, in science, and academia. There is it's almost competing pomposities, and it cripples and it removes people from what they're supposed to be doing. And so you can't live up to it, but it's really good advice.
Have you ever had to check yourself?
Many times. I have a little thing that I do when I'm talking to somebody. I put this finger over it and jam it into my fingernail, and it tells me, "Shut the up."
You've not changed.
Listen.
You've not changed in 50 years? No, I think it's very smart.
Well, it's painful.
Well, no, but to have a way to
find
remind
an easier
yourself.
way to remind myself.
Well, you can put a string
to
around your
shut.
wrist or something,
Yeah.
but no.
But then, and you think about.
We won't get into your sadomasochistic.
I mean,
tendencies.
suppose journalism would really see 21 books go back.
Yeah.
What happened? How did we get here? And people criticize, why can't you do some of it contemporaneously? And I often do, but it's a slow build to find out what happened, and makes it
worth it.
It just takes a lot of time.
Are there any living Watergate figures, sources you wished you'd had, you haven't had, you've never met, you didn't get to talk to? Living. I mean, is there anybody still out there that you never got to?
Nixon.
Well, he's not alive.
Yeah, I know.
Yeah,
but
Nixon. You never even met
tried.
Nixon. You never even met Nixon.
Yeah,
right?
and we tried a number of times, and we were not on even his Christmas card list.
Any of his family members?
Yeah, I knew David Eisenhower quite well. Julie Nixon Eisenhower was quite kind a couple of times, but then when they read the last book, The Final Days, about Nixon's unraveling, and the great Nixon moment I think, is his farewell address, August 9th.
In the East Room, right?
In the East Room, and he had his friends and his family and his daughters and son-in-laws and wife were there. And it was Nixon unscripted. There was no speech, and he was just kind of spontaneously,
And
you know,
he
my
was very moist.
yeah,
sweating
he was
and
sweating,
crying
and he was. Am I moist?
No.
Am I no? Okay.
No,
When you go
I
like
just,
that, I immediately crawl in my.
you talk about it, and I see the image. It was remarkable.
But see, and so he's parading out all of his grievances.
Yeah.
No one will ever write a book about my mother, he says, because there've just been a book on Jackie Kennedy. My father owned a lemon ranch, the poorest lemon ranch ever, until they found oil on it, and he'd already sold it. I mean, it was just grief. And then I had an occasion to go back and look at the tape of this, because it was televised, and Nixon kind of turns and smiles, and it's almost this is why I want you to listen to me. This is why you're here. And he said, quote, "Always remember, others may hate you, but those who hate you don't win unless you hate them, and then you destroy yourself." Now think of the wisdom, not just for politics, but for young teenagers, older people like you and I. I mean, hate is the poison.
Yeah, and grievances.
Yeah,
Grievances.
But he realized at that moment, whether it was something he understood, I don't know, but he said it is, oh, the hating got me, not my enemies. I destroyed myself, which is really, really true. And I remember doing one of these interviews with Trump, and this was leading up to the 2020 election, and I was down in Mar-a-Lago, said, "Come on down," and I mean, he goes into a room, everybody else stands up and claps, and he loves it, and and we sat down for a very long interview. He'd just been impeached in the Zelensky case because of where he asked Zelensky, Ukraine leader, to help him get dirt on Joe Biden, and he was going through that. And then at the end, Scavino, his aide, came in, and he said, "Show this video." So he opens up his laptop, and it's a video of Trump's State of the Union address, but it's not Trump's words. There's this elevator hyped up music just playing, and the video goes to members in the congressmen, congresswomen, senators, to see them. And so first it goes to Bernie Sanders, I think, and Bernie's kind of, looking a little drifty and and Trump's right back here looking at it. Hate. See the hate? Then it shows AOC. And it's just, he can't, I thought he was going to bite me in the back of my neck. Hate. Do you see this hate? Then it goes to Kamala Harris, she was a senator then, not vice president, and she's there, and she looks kind of casual, and hate, Trump is saying, and I'm no, where does this evaluation come from? And I'm sure a lot of Democrats did still hate him probably, but he was connecting the image of these people to hate. And he couldn't, it was
separate it, yeah.
very troubling. And I draw a straight line from Nixon, August 9th, 74, to Trump, almost 50 years, not quite 50 years later, just absorbing and unwilling to reconcile political difference and opposition. And he was president 4 years ago. He did not know where the levers of power were. He now knows.
Yeah.
He's gone to school on how to use the power of the presidency. Now, whether you like it, whether you don't like it, if he's elected again, there's not going to be wobble. There's going to be, I know how to do this.
On that note, our time is up. I think it's a good place to end. It's great to have you here for a fifth time.
Thank you
I look
for
forward to
inviting
the
me.
sixth time.
Thank
It's always
you.
great to see you and
Great.
listen
Thank
to you.
Thank
Yes. And
Thank you.
thank you, everyone. We're going to let Bob go downstairs because we have books and he can do some signing. And we even have All the President's Men. And if you haven't read it, you should read it. It's
Okay, can I just, there's
Yeah,
one
we're
other
done.
thing.
We're done.
I'm sorry to keep you for 2 more
the
minutes.
stage
but
is yours. But
in the second book I did, Rage, there is a scene of Rex Tillerson, who was Trump's first Secretary of State. And Tillerson tells this story. Now, before he was Secretary of State, he was CEO of ExxonMobil. So the CEO of ExxonMobil spent a lot of time with a guy named Vladimir Putin. And because they build real time. So he tells this story. Putin feels like we treat Russia like a banana republic. And then in 2015, Tillerson said he would, talk about a move. Tillerson said he'd been out tooling around the Black Sea on Putin's yacht. Can you imagine that moment? And Putin said to me, you need to remember we're a nuclear power. As powerful as you Americans think you won the Cold War, and you did not win the Cold War. We never fought that war. We could have, but we didn't. And Tillerson said at that moment, his spine froze. And so don't, again, it's like the abortion conflict. It goes way back, and it's like the Putin, who he is, what he's up to, goes way back also. Thank you.
Thank you. Again, thank you. Thank you. Thank you. That was great.